So I finished cleaning up the decks to put the heads on, and I already dropped one of the heads on, but now I'm getting ready to do the second one. And then once both are on, I'm going to go through all at once and torque both of them down using the torque sequence and put some sealant on there. So beyond that, got to put all the lifters in, the spider tray, the oil pump drive, the steam line that runs, it connects the two heads around the back because this engine's reverse cooled. Got to put all that back together and then pretty much slap the intake on and should be good to go from there. I still have to also put the hub on too. Right now I have the engine at 1 top dead center, so all I really have to do is figure out if the cam's at 1 or 6, because when 1's at top dead center, 6 will also be. So I had to figure out which one's like actually at TDC, which one's firing and which one isn't. And once that's done, basically can go around, measure for push rods, order those, and yeah, the engine will pretty much be good to go. It's just a little, a few little bolts, bits and pieces here and there. But yeah, this is the first time I've actually been working in the car in quite a while. So the head gasket I'm using this time around is a Felpro 9966 PT, which is pretty thick. I think it's around a 0.045, 0.05. I don't remember. It's been a while since I looked at all the at the specs, but I know I needed to go with the thicker head gasket, the stock replacement style. This guy, just because the chambers that I have on these LE1 heads are 52cc, which is quite a bit smaller than stock. And I'm trying to keep the compression a little bit on the lower side too. I think it came out to like a little over 11 to 1. It's like 11.1 to 1. I really want to try to tow with this car. I was going to try to pull the Camaro on like a small aluminum trailer, and that car I think only weighs about like 3,300-ish. And this car has a stock towing capacity of about 5,000. So I figured that car on an aluminum trailer shouldn't be that bad. But yeah, I kind of need to keep the compression low and the cam small just so I can actually pull anything, because the T56 doesn't really have a crawler gear or anything. That's a lot of the reason that I put 456 gears in it too. So more effective gearing should help me out, and so should slightly lower compression. I mean, realistically, if this was like an all-out build, if I was going to do like a standard like heads cam LT build to try to crack 400 wheel, I would definitely go with like 12 to 1 compression, and I would go with a pretty sizable cam, something more in like the high 220s, low 230s range, duration at 50. So, but this guy is a lot smaller, and this isn't really max effort. I'm only really shooting for like 370 to 380 wheel. Hopefully I hit that with the stick. So the thing I've had to do with all these head bolts is go over them with a little bit of ARP lube. These are ARP head bolts. They came with the heads, so I figured, hey, might as well use them if they're free. Otherwise, I would have just used Engine Tech or Felpro stock replacement style ones, which I think are like $10 per head. But I already had these, so. But all I really had to do was just put a little bit of that grease in between the washer and the head bolt itself, and also make sure that the washer's on correctly, that the bevel side is pointed upward towards the head of the bolt. But yep, just went through, did all these. The other head I already have them done. It's just to make sure that the torque reading that you're getting through your torque wrench is accurate. Alright, so both the heads are on there and they're partially torqued. I haven't put any sort of sealant on any of the threads, and I was basically just saving that for the end. What I typically do is I do 3 different torque steps, I should say. And at first I go through the torque sequence at 35 foot-pounds, and then I go through at 55 foot-pounds, and right before I go and do the final pass at 70, I take each of the bolts individually out as I'm going through the torque sequence, and I'll coat them with this stuff right here, which is Permatex former gasket. It's Permatex number 2. I think it works really well on head bolts and water pump bolts and things of that nature. I know some people like to use the right stuff, the black RTV, but I don't know, number 2 has always worked well for me, and it's pretty cheap. So I'm basically just going to go through one by one and pull each of these head bolts out as I'm moving through the torque sequence. And then I'll pretty much be finished. And what I mean by that is when you move through the torque sequence, you start at the very center of the head and you spiral outward to the perimeter bolts. Like first you would start this middle guy right here, and then you move over there and kind of go around in a circle until you get to the very end. Well, what I'm going to do is with each of those bolts, I'll just pull it out, coat the threads with sealant as much as I feel I need to do, and then put it back in, torque it, and then move on to the next bolt. I found that that works pretty well for me. It's just something that I've done ever since I've put MLS head gaskets on the Camaro. I noticed when you start out and you put all the bolts in, when the head gasket, especially on an MLS gasket, when you put the bolts in and that the gasket itself isn't fully compressed, the thread sealant can make its way in between the gasket itself and the head or the block, and then kind of push its way around the cylinders and make a huge mess on the deck, which is really what you don't want. So I've always had good luck with seating the head first, and then before my final pass, I go in and I add the sealant. Alright, everything's torqued up and good to go, so next thing I gotta do is put all the lifters in, put the dog bones in, the spider, wheel pump drive, steam line, intake. It's plenty of work.